Good morning, everyone. Whoa. They both slipped. The big equities here, big tech is down drastically, specifically Nvidia and other AI names. Apple is somehow holding, but overall, markets took a very, very big beatdown from the news that started last Friday, right? That started a bit of a sell-off that went all the way through the weekend. You had a plethora of new information over the weekend, right? Investors, just analysts, everyone in general started to dive deeper and deeper into Deepseek, and we saw that this thing took a risk-off turn very, very quickly. So the AI boom has pushed companies to spend billions and billions of dollars to maintain their edge. But as we saw, a very surprising turn with Chinese AI startup Deepseek, large language model outperforming American rivals and stirring up fears of a China takeover over the US in the new technology space, in the AI space, calling it the AI Cold War. Now, I think that people might be jumping the gun thinking that, oh God, it's over. I think there are a lot of factors here that bring the fear out in terms of the cost basis, right? And Nvidia in general using much, much less hardware than initially anticipated. So DeepSeek's latest LLM called R1 has outperformed models from established rivals like Microsoft-backed OpenAI, Meta, and Anthropic, which have spent billions of dollars to scale up their LLMs. And DeepSeek's first open-source LLM, DeepSeek V3, released last December, took less than $6 million to build, apparently, right? Using NVIDIA's H800 chips for training, the R1 built off of the V3 is developed to perform complex reasoning and rivals OpenAI's O1. Now, you gotta be careful with everything that you read, looking at this and jumping to conclusions. Obviously, the market took it in a fearful tone, right? As we can see, everything's down pretty drastically. But at the same time, you need a little more time and information to let this thing kind of settle down. People were testing DeepSeek. I saw multiple things online, looked at it myself, and some of the basic questions seemed to be difficult for it to answer, and a lot of censorship and overload. So, again, to say that, okay, they've overtaken OpenAI in a matter of weeks, right, since R1 has come out or whatever it was, is a little bit jumping the gun in my opinion. I know that NVIDIA right now, these chips, them using much, much less power is a pretty big hit. And it's probably going to put pressure on the US, right? If all these things come out as factual material information, it's going to put a lot more pressure on the US to perform better with less resources and less capital, especially after Stargate was announced, I believe it was last week or 2 weeks ago. Don't quote me on the timeline, but especially since Stargate was announced to spend $500 billion on AI in the coming years. Now, the new model is cost-effective and runs on reduced capability chips, Saxo analyst wrote, and the development raises questions about high valuations of leading AI companies like NVIDIA and the investment case for the entire AI supply chain. Also, DeepSeek's LLMs have been developed despite U.S. Export controls to limit China's access to advanced chips needed for the AI work. DeepSeek's recent progress shows that the perceived lead the U.S. once has had narrowed significantly based on the information that we got right now. So the race seems to be tightening and tightening and tightening. Now, doubts over U.S. dominance in the AI space coupled with high stock valuations dragged a lot of this big tech down, right? Specifically, NASDAQ futures were down, like I said, nearly hit a limit down on the overnight session. Apple, for some reason, still holding, but fair enough. You look at this, right, since Friday's close to the bottom of the move, 5.2-ish% or so, had we have dropped a lot more, right, towards that negative 7% marker, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Sorry. Couldn't be avoided. So if we had dropped down to that negative 7% marker, right, that would have been a limit down. That would have been something pretty cataclysmic. That would have been a 1,500 point drop in a single day on NASDAQ, which would have raised a lot more concerns. Not that concerns have not been raised currently as things stand, but it would have been, I think, a lot worse. And right now, this rally is very reminiscent of what we've seen in prior situations where we had this kind of overbearing news that comes into the market, destroys it on the overnight session, gets picked back up on a bit, and creates this V bottom into coming sessions. Now, I'm not saying that this is the case. I'm not saying buy everything right now, but I think that more information is certainly needed to have a better understanding of what's going on. Now, along with that, this week is going to be insane. You have a shitload of news coming out. You've got tech earnings, right? You've got Apple on Wednesday, I believe, after the bell. You've got Tesla, Microsoft, Meta, and IBM. IBM, a big AI name as well. So a lot of these big tech earnings are coming out after the bell Tuesday and Wednesday this week, along with the Fed that comes out on Wednesday with the expectations of not cutting rates. This is going to be the first meeting of the year. So this is a extraordinarily jam-packed week that's going to involve a lot of volatility. I've been looking at this thing pretty much since I got up, right, for hours now, and the volatility in these markets is pretty insane, right? NASDAQ is going to be a little more difficult to trade, I think, meaning that you need to ideally widen the stop and be very selective, reduce your size. S&P as well. I think that this volatility right now, this movement, it has, right, this whole week to play out based on all this news. You have Nvidia is down at $127 or so, right? It's down like 12%. You've got AMD down 6.5%, Meta's down 6%, Amazon down 5%, Google down 4%, Tesla down 4%, right? So big hits all around on this, and I think it's going to be a bit touchy to just like jump in there and start buying everything, but right now we are starting to see turning points, right? Interesting pivots that are trying to shape up for some of that buy side to come in. And right, I'm probably taking some nibbles here on some of these big tech names, right? Nothing crazy, seeing as these knives down generally get picked up semi-quickly. So there's a lot to consider starting this week, right? The worst thing to do is jump in here with size and start battering at this thing, as well as using your general stops, right? Your normal stops. I personally am going to be sizing down and increasing my stops in respect to the volatility. Now, the S&P 500, colossal downside move as well here. Gaps lower on the Sunday overnight. I didn't stay up to look at this or trade this, but maybe that would have turned things around. I was going into this week bullish, but obviously when you see something like this is a tail event, right? It's one of those things that comes out and you're like, whoa, shit, what happened? But honestly, the S&P, a very pivotal point is 59.90 today. You're going to really want to watch that. And as a buyer, right, if you're looking for the buy side in this market, it's very pivotal that they hold this 59.90. Otherwise, you move back into the auctions and you most likely complete the unfinished auction from prior weeks down at 59.20. So I'm not saying that this downside's complete, but we're at a position right now where you could see that the market might take this into a different stride and say, I don't believe this is BS, to start bidding it up. So don't get caught on either side thinking that, okay, we have this massive gap down, we have to continue, or we have this massive gap down, we have to go up right now. I do anticipate the first move off the day to be some kind of that upside, some kind of upside, but on S&P, again, 59.90 is very pivotal, and if we can bid above 60.30,